Okay. We've done an outline. I'm going to come back with first and second pass butchers. Do y'all know what that is? First and second pass butchers. Y'all know, are y'all familiar with those?
No. Not by that name, no.
The first and second pass says no.
A first pass butcher, a second pass butcher. This angle right here is probably 20 degrees. This one is more at 10 to 15. And what we're doing is producing separation. This is your metal, okay? That's your first pass. Second, you follow the same line. Remember, we've already got a little tiny groove outline in this. Coming back, this hump right here begins to smooth out with this one. All right, so what we're doing is blending right here. We're beginning to blend this area back here. Later on, we can come in at this point with a little flatter. And this is what's going to give you the illusion that you're looking for, okay? You can probably see what I'm doing hopefully on that camera. Got a brush.
One on your hand.
Okay. I'm not picking up a butcher either. I'm just sliding. Now remember, this type of work was traditional work in Europe in the 12th through 18th century. We've just forgotten a whole lot. You see the line we've established, okay? I don't know if you can tell it, but you've got a right angle, and then you're beginning to cut. You're beginning to create some separation visually, and what you're trying to do is give the illusion that there's one piece placed on top of another piece. But they're all one piece of metal, okay? Where do you think ideas come from? Where do ideas for doing all this come from?
Mistakes. Nature.
Nature? What else?
Bathroom.
What? Yeah?
Bad drugs.
Yeah, bad drugs will do it. What else? Yeah, any of y'all got some books?
Experience.
I can't recommend these too highly. This right here contains all of my heroes. This is almost worn out. It's beginning to fall apart. I take it to the shop. You look at bits and pieces. This is a Dover publication, probably less than $20. And these are all of my heroes from the 12th century through the 18th century. They're not people that I know. They have no names. And some of the most fantastic work you will ever see without any kind of tools that we got today. And I'm trying my best to see if I can duplicate some of the work that they did back then. The other one is this book. You get great. One is Samuel Yellin Metalworkers. The other one is Decorative Antique Ironwork by D'Alame. If you don't have any other books and you like this kind of work, you probably ought to pick these up. This is less than $20 right here. And I don't get a commission.
You want to pass them around?
Yeah, you can pass them around. Another thing, y'all saw the pattern transfer that we went through. Very few people have ever seen this, and I don't bring it out very often. 1934. Shop drawings. The yellow X's that you see on this were made by Samuel Yellin. This right here, be very gentle with this. This is fragile. This is an actual shop drawing off the floor. You can run your finger right here, or you can look at the back. And what they did is take a piece of carbon paper and a stylus from the front. They laid this on the steel and took a stylus and traced and transferred that carbon outline. This is detail work, but this was normal. This is what these guys did. Be very careful with this.
I don't even think you should.
Be This is 1934. I will pass one more. Let me do this, and I'll get my fireman says I'm wasting time.
You're not going to talk about it, please. I'll pass. You lost it.
Remember, we were talking about the little striker. All right, what replaced the striker from the 16th century on up to present day was a treadle hammer. Oliver Cromwell developed the very first one in the 1600s. And now you can begin to see this developing a little bit more in terms of relief. Got it? A little bit more.
Is that still the first pass, Butcher?
Still first pass. Now I'm going to second pass. Okay, got a little more relief. You're in the process of creating illusion, all right? Here's one more that I will pass around. You probably won't ever see any of these again. This is stamped on the back. April 19th, 1929, Samuel Yellin Metalworkers, 5520 Arch Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 1927. The red pencil marks are Yellin's corrections. When he got to the shop floor, he looked at it and he said, well, this is wrong, that needs to be changed. Okay? pass that around. You may not ever touch another one of these.
How did you come by?
I have a good friend, George. And in fact, this is the envelope that came in. You see the return address? Right up here?
Yeah, Swananoa.
Yeah. George was a good friend. He knew I wanted to learn. He knew I desperately wanted to learn. And I would call him probably once every 2 weeks and ask questions. And I said, I hope I'm not bothering you. But I said, it doesn't matter. I'm going to bother you anyway. I'm trying to learn something, George. And he knew that I was serious. And he did not mind helping me out. He did not mind giving me advice. And I certainly don't mind helping somebody else out who wants to learn. Going to second pass butcher next.
So you went 3 times with the first pass?
One time. Oh, twice. Twice on first pass. Remember, all we're doing right now is creating separation for an illusion. A lot of this is the same process that was used for 1,000 years. The tools that I'm using have over 1,000 years of history behind them. These are the same tools in terms of shape that were used 1,000 years ago, beginning with Notre Dame. All right, that was second pass. I'll go through that one more time. How do you know that, Ernie? That's some more of that BS. No. There's a book called On Divers Arts. On D-I-V-E-R-S Arts. Diverse Arts. Yeah, sorry. It was written by, the author was Theophilus in the 11th century. It was written in Latin, and it was translated to English somewhere in the 1920s. He describes some of these tools in that book that was written in the 11th century. So what I'm telling you is not BS. I'm not pulling your leg. It's the absolute gospel related to metalwork. Another thing when you're using these tools, you really need to press down pretty hard, because if you don't, this tool can jump, and if it jumps and you're coming down, you're going to do something really screwy inside that you don't want to do.
How do you fix that?
You're trying to press this tool down until you begin to see it shake. You're holding it, you just don't hold it like this. You're pressing down hard until it starts, your hand begins to tremble.
You do make them this week.
Start over. I'll tell you a true story about that. You want a true story? The first lock I ever made was in a class with Tom Latney. I knew nothing about locks, so I took a lock class. And we worked hang on. Let me get what I'm looking for. We worked for a day and a half making a key. The key was for this little dude right here. This is the key. I worked a day and a half on this sucker. You have to make the key and then build a lock around the key. Well, about 11 o'clock on the second day, I almost had this sucker done. Last thing I had to do was drill a hole in the center about this deep. The only drill we had, and the only one that Tom would allow us to use, was an egg beater. I got the hole a tad crooked, wasn't straight. And I said, Tom, what do you think? Hey, look, you slid it on the little bitty bar, and the bar, instead of being like this, it came out like that. And there was a window open in the shop. And he took the key and went, pew. Said, you got to start over. That's a day and a half. I hit my knees. I almost cried. I said, you can't correct it? And he said, no, start over. And so sometimes you learn by screwing up. You don't want to screw up real bad, but at least some of those instances, you learn not to do some things. So, yeah, I have learned to start over quite a bit on a lot of things. I don't make near as many mistakes now as I did at the beginning because I have had to start over too much. Let's heat that again, Clay. I went to a flatter. I'm still taking a ridge out. There's a little ridge still remaining right here. So I'm taking a flatter now, and this ridge is beginning to come like that. It's illusion. That's all you're working with is illusion. Hey, hang on, Clay. Let me get, I know you're ready. Do y'all see what I have to endure with Clay Spencer? I tell you, it's tough. It's really tough. All right. Remember the treadle hammer that this treadle hammer I use at home is bolted to the floor, so I don't have to worry about wobble in it. But just so that you'll know, this is not what it normally does.
This is still flatter?
Still flatter. Now I've got some that we will begin to go to that are round flatters to get into curves. Now, I really want to encourage people to try to do this because there's just not a whole lot of us out there that are doing it now. And we're afraid, a lot of us are really concerned that the work's disappearing. And this is not hard. This is not hard. You have to pay attention, and I'm glad you're sitting here because some of the best people I know of back home that do this work are ladies. Y'all have the patience that the guys don't have, and you can pay. Y'all are good at attention to detail, where the guys want to go wham bam, thank you ma'am, and we're done, and that's not what this work requires. So you really have to work at it, but it is not hard work. And I'd rather do this than eat. I'd rather do this than sleep. There's only one other thing that I'd rather do than this. How we doing?
Did you make 2 passes with the...
Yeah. I'm going to a round flatter right now. It's just round piece of S7, 1/2 inch, to get in this curve that I've got. And I might use it a little bit more, but I want to take out a lot of ridges. I don't mind seeing the marks of the tool.
In your chisel drawer, you've got circles around the top of some chisel.
When you see, those are what I use in demonstration. That way I don't have to search for 5 minutes looking for the tool I want, because most of them are color coded, that if I need a flatter and I know I'm demoing, then that's the one I need to use. Now a treadle hammer, you can go from an extremely light tap to a pretty heavy hit. Okay. I don't know if you can see it. We've got pretty good visual separation now in this. We've got pretty decent visual separation. But you see this little hump right here? All this has got to come out. You see this bulge right there? This metal has to go somewhere. So later on at dinner, normally I'll take a file and file that off. If we've got a grinder here, I'll grind it off. And
You won't kind of forge it back in.
yeah, I'll take all the irregularities out. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. He said knowledge tells you what is, imagination tells you what will be. And it's a really good philosophy to go by. Sometimes, let's just stop it for 1 second. You have good intentions, you know where you're going, you know what you're trying to do, but sometimes it doesn't wind up quite the way you expect. Y'all ever had that happen? I've got twin daughters, and when they were 7, Saturday was my day to keep them. And I always made sardine dip on Saturday morning. A couple cans of sardines, a couple of tablespoons of mayonnaise, some mustard, put it in a blender, and then throw them a bag of potato chips, and we'd watch the ball game. And they didn't know that there was something wrong with it until they got in the 2nd grade. But anyway, Saturday was my day to keep them, and so I wanted to lose about 10 pounds, so they came out with this stuff that you mix up in a blender. So I was there in the kitchen one morning, and had this little bar, and we had a pretty big dog that came in the house in the mornings. And so I had a blender and this pink powder, and you had ice, and you had milk, and it looked like Pepto-Bismol. I mean, that's kind of what it looked like. And one of the kids woke up and came waddling down the hall, you know, rubbing her eyes and got, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm mixing this up. I'm going to drink it. I'm going to lose weight. And she went ripping right back down the hall and told her sister, said, get up quick. Daddy's going to lose weight. So they both came running in there, and then the dog was sitting there too, and they were sitting at the bar watching. The dog was watching. And they kept asking questions. Well, what are you doing? How are you doing this? What's going to happen? What are you mixing up? And, you know, you get distracted. Then you're putting milk and you're putting this powdered crap in there, and then you're filling the thing up with ice cubes. Now, a blender, you know, you've got blend that goes, and then you've got froth that goes, and then you've got puree that goes, yeah! You know, and that's that button way over on the far right side. Well, I got so distracted with them talking and asking questions, I hit puree. Well, there's one thing I forgot to do. Now, blender is almost like a volcano. And I forgot to put the top on that sucker. And my eyes got big, and before I could do anything, ice cubes shot out of that, and they were ricocheting off the ceiling and off the walls. Both the girls slid under the table with the dog, and the dog was going, woo, woo, woo. And the kids were down there. And I finally got over and hit the off button. Finally. And when I did, there was pink crap all over the ceilings, all over the walls. Now remember, their mama had left to go shopping. And one of them crawled out from under the table, and she went. And the first words out of her mouth were, I'm gonna tell Mama. So sometimes you have real good intentions, but they just don't work out the way you want them to. Have y'all ever experienced that? I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move this. It's all right, I got it.
I thought you were ready.
Well, I was almost ready. All right, well, let's get that tip going real good. But a lot of experiences, you know, you can relate to metal work. It's just normal. Do you have any questions so far about what we're doing? That's progressing. You can go a lot deeper, but in the essence of time, I'm just wanting to show you the process. There is one over here somewhere. All right, Clay, I'm coming. I promise you I am. I'll be right there. Pass that around. This is what you're basically going to wind up with. Scroll work. we'll do a little bit of decorative work and we'll call this one pretty much done. You can go through a lot more refining if you want to, but for what we're doing, to show you the process, that's primarily the main thing. Oh no, I want the center hot. Where the chasing was done. We're gonna go to a couple of little, maybe one teardrop tool. Just to give a little bit of different nuance in it.
Do you orient your chisels the same every time you use them?
Yeah, I do. There's occasion when I turn them around backwards, if I need to. That's good enough. Now on a treadle hammer, if they're made correctly, you can go from a pretty intense lick to something that's extremely light.
Hammer?
Hammer?
Camera?
Camera. Sorry. We just put the little teardrop in. We don't need a whole lot of heat now. All right. Follow what we're doing so far. This was used a whole lot in early work. At least the process and some of the motif that you see right here was used a good bit, especially on flat bar scroll work. Instead of rosettes that you had on the end, you'd have something here, and people couldn't figure out how you had a layer on top of another layer and no visible separation. They didn't understand that. Today, if people aren't familiar with metalwork, they can't understand that either. I mean, you have a lot of people like that. That's good. It's all right. We're about to call that one done. Huh?
Touch mark?
You need it?
Touch mark?
Yeah, you want me to put a touch mark on it? And you also, a lot of times what I'll finish this with is a file, because I just don't like sharp corners on the outside of things, and you'll file it or you'll chamfer it. You don't want it feeling rough and sharp and ragged with your hand. You want it smooth. all of this metal work you do like this needs to be relatively sexy. You know, it needs to be quite nice. And so I'll finish this at dinner, smoothing everything up. I'll take this bulge out that you see right here. These edges, I'll file those where they're not sharp or rigid. And really what I need to do right now, just for a second, is chamfer those edges just a little bit. And for all practical purposes, it's complete. You can make it deeper, you can make it a lot more pronounced, but just looking at time, we need to continue to move on.
After it cools, I'll pass it around.
All right, okay. Yes.
Coach might mention your safety chain here.
Well, first time I demonstrated in Alabama, first time I demonstrated anywhere, I had a little bitty rod right here, maybe a half inch, it may have been less than that. Some kind of little wiggly turnbuckle on it. And somebody came up to me and said, Clay Spencer is sitting out in that audience and his chin is on the floor. And he has the most horrified look on his face. And they said, you better fix that and fix it quick. Well, I said, why? I said, you heard the story about Clay's hand? I said, yeah. I said, when you get home, you fix that sucker. So Clay told me, he said, you need a more stable bar and you need something up here. And I said, well, I got a board down here. I said, forget the board. So that's what this is for. It's a safety chain. And if my hand is under here, it can't go any further. That's it. That's what this is for. And safety, really, when you're dealing with this stuff, is paramount. A lot of times when I'm under here like that little flat sheet, I'm doing it cold and my hand's under here. At times, I'm hitting some pretty hard licks. I learned the hard way after they told me about Clay being horrified. I was under here and I was working on a piece of pretty hot steel and I didn't have that. And I'd forgotten to put my board in. And you learn, it doesn't take but one time to be up here with an 1800 degree piece of steel and your chisel turns sideways and it smashes the back of your hand on the 1800 degrees. And then you say, yeah, you know, experience is a hard teacher. She gives the test first and the lesson afterwards. Now, if you want me to, I can do this, or I don't have to, but if you want to, I'll sand this at dinner and not take up any more time now and show you the finish that you get on a solid bar by driving scale in it. We'll do that. I'll do that at dinner. Now, we are ready to move on. I have a yellow bucket somewhere. It may be back over here. Is it over here? You see a yellow bucket?
I see a yellow bucket, yep.
All right. Sorry. Oh. I'm sorry. Okay. We can do this in 1/2 inch, or we can do it in 3/8, or we can do it in both. Doesn't matter. Anybody else taking notes now that was not taking notes earlier? All right. I'm going to show you how to do this. It is a 16th century German motif. It is not hard, but I can't do it without a treadle hammer. By the way, on motifs, that's all I had of 3/8 clay. It had some other crap on the end of it. Motif-wise, pass this around. This was used from the 12th century on up through today. And a lot of the metalwork was decorated with those designs. Some of you heard me talk a little bit maybe yesterday, and I'll show you some really good examples of that today. I've tried to copy a whole lot of Yellen's work. And from what I've found, what I've seen. And then you have people say, well, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, copying other people. Well, how many of you know how to draw a point on the end of a square bar? 6? Okay. Who showed you how to do it? Do you remember who showed you how? Every time you do it, you're copying what they did. So draw a point on a square bar by some other method, and then you can be original. But there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And you know, that's how we learn, is by copying somebody else. And we learn also by trial and error, not by trial and rightness. And there is a whole pile in a corner of my shop full of nothing but errors. All right. All we're doing is establishing the preform. Clay, I was talking briefly while I was working.
What?
I was talking briefly while I was
You were
working.
doing wonderful. Dude can't hammer while he's talking. In all his previous life, he had to have an eye contact while he was talking. They can hear you.
I used to have to make a lot of presentations, and I normally like to look at the audience, and it just feels very uncomfortable to me to talk to you about what I'm doing like this without looking at you. I was taught that was very inattentive to an audience to turn your back to a board. I mean, I was just taught that was improper and inappropriate, and they said, don't you ever do it, or we'll fail you in this class. Well, you certainly didn't want to fail after drinking all that wine at night trying to come up with new and different ideas. So, you tried to look at your audience and be sure that they understood what you were doing. To do this, it requires 5 tools: a straight chisel, 2 curved teardrops, 1 curved chisel, and a ball tool. And that's all. This is the same process that I went through with, now here's something that I don't think y'all really want to do. I better not, no, I can do it. Don't do this. Don't work I'm not gonna do it. Don't work with a hot piece of steel without holding a chisel and something else. All we're gonna do is run a center line. And you want that line, if you look at some examples that I passed out, you want it to feather out on either end, and you want it heavy in the center. Just very, very, not real hot. You can turn that fire off. You're not going to go all the way to the end. You're going to go deeper in the center. And then the reason for that is when you get to the back side to repose that leaf out, that slit where you in the center opens up. And it just becomes a whole lot more interesting. All right, right side, or left side, it's like reading a book for me. Teardrop, curved teardrops. And y'all see that? '16th century German. They were using curved teardrops back then. If you'll notice the back side, I went down pretty good. And from the back, you can begin to see some little fluted areas coming out on the side right here. You see that? These are the same leaves that are on that lantern. Exactly the same ones. And I'm gonna tell y'all, I am so sick of making these little leaves, I could scream. If I never make another one as long as I live, that would be perfectly fine with me. But the good thing is, I'm showing y'all how to do it. So I don't have to do it anymore. I got all of y'all to do it. Well, anytime you want to copy any of these tools, if you want to take a block of wood or a piece of cardboard, while you're here, drive it into it and take it home with you, and that's your example. And just make sure you put them back in the right bin that you got them out of. Yeah. Both sides. For this, you have to make, you can see the fluted part. Is probably, to be honest with you, for me, it's one of the most interesting small leaf designs that I've seen. Not because I did it, but it's just because of the way it looks. You're almost at a point of jewelry here. This is small work, but it's really pretty dynamic. It's very fluid. It has tremendous detail. I can't do any work any smaller than this. It's really kind of impossible for me. I don't need a fire for this one, Clay. The next thing you do is go to a curved chisel that has the same curve as your curved teardrop, okay? And I need, y'all remember to tell me where I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. This is, I can do this cold now, okay? Same curve on the other side. You don't have to have right and left for this. This little single curve in between the lobes of that curved teardrop really make the piece very, very interesting and very, very detailed. Can y'all see those little straight chisel marks in between now? The only problem with this leaf at this point is it is absolutely dead. Has no life to it. It's just dead as it can be. So now we've got to add some life to it. It doesn't take much to do that. I don't know what this is. Somebody gave that to me, and it's some of the hardest crap I've ever seen in my life. But it's tough. But it works fine. Okay. Backside, upside down. Just a tad more. Why wood?
It makes smoke. Good resistance, but it doesn't damage metal.
You don't damage what you've done on the front. And you can do it with anything. You can do it with pine, you can do it with oak, you can do it, it doesn't matter what it is. There's the impression. But if you do it on a piece of metal, you're really going to screw it up. All I'm going to do here, we're doing okay right now. And now, you've got life in the leaf. You've got interest in the leaf. You haven't screwed up anything else on it. But you see that? I'm sorry, folks, this is sexy. This is really nice. Would you brush that, please? I mean, look how nice that flows. And you got a lot of, and it's the same way I did all the leaves over there on that lantern. And I don't care as long as I live if I ever do another one of these. Do you want me to draw a stem out on this? Do y'all know how to, whoever gets this, I'll put it in the auction. we'll cut it off and y'all can draw the stem out. The only thing I do with stems, if you look at some I threw out there, it's just not a circle. It comes up and got a little, and it just adds a little more to it. But draw your stem out 4 inches long. If you get this, draw the stem 4 inches long. And you want it thin, and you want it delicate, and you want it coming to a point. And then what I'll do, I'll heat it up. Generally I'll go to a Treadle torch instead of sticking it back in the fire. But it doesn't matter, any heat source you want it. I'll hold the tongs in one hand, and take a pair of needle nose pliers with all the ridges ground off, and just shape like that. And that's how you do it. Pass that around. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Is there any place in this country you'd recommend people could go and see examples of Gothic work, like Canton, Mississippi?
Washington Cathedral. I'm sure there are a lot of places. The boat, what is it called in Florida? Yellen did a lot of work down there. Bach Tower, Washington Cathedral. There's got to be a lot of stuff in Philadelphia that he did.
Did he do the bend?
I think he probably did. He did a lot of work for the Vanderbilts. You can go to, where is it?
Biltmore House.
Biltmore House at Asheville. There's one little bitty spot down in Mississippi, South Mississippi of all places, that he did some phenomenal work in. But I think there's work scattered all around, everywhere. But the only places I know of that I've been, and all the times I've been to D.C. having to work, I was never able to do anything during the daylight, and then at night everything was shut down, so I never really got to go to the National Cathedral there in Washington. I wanted to. I do know that this is one of the motifs that was used there. I saw some photographs, and I said, that's a cool little guy right there. It was this size. It went along the bottom of a railing. Your railing's up here. This skirted the bottom of that railing, and I think these occurred every 5 to 8 feet. And I said, I wonder if I could do that. So I took the photograph, put it on a copy machine, blew it up to what I thought might be the right size. And this is done just like the chasing work that we've already done. You lay a pattern on there, take a straight chisel, trace it, then you go back with a first, second pass butcher, then a flatter. Then I do a little bit of repoussé work from the back to push it out. And that's it. That's the process.
Did you push that out into wood?
Yeah, I push this out in wood. You can't, I don't know of anything else you can push it out in and not screw the front up. No, if you're doing this hot, you can't use lead if you're doing it hot. And if you're trying to do it cold, you can do it cold, but this is a chasing and repoussé hammer. And the cold work doing repoussé and chasing, if you getting in 12 gauge, you're doing some pretty hard stuff. Let me go back and tell you something. Hand me that. There's that door knocker right there. No, that one. This little guy right here is done in 12 gauge. This is a Gothic door knocker. This is a This is a piece right here, starts out as 1/2 inch by 2, the knocker itself. This is one solid piece from this point all the way around to this point, but it starts out as 1/2 by 2. This little guy is 12 gauge. Okay, here's the test. Does this little guy have eyes? This is your test question. Does he have eyes?
The eyes are implied.
Are you sure he doesn't have eyes? Think about your answer. It's all in your head. Does he have eyes?
Yes.
No.
In my mind, he does.
He does have eyes. You think this little guy's alive? Not only do I think he's alive, I know positively he's alive. And ever since y'all walked past this table, he has been watching every one of y'all all morning long. He's got the face of a cat. He's got horns, and in between the horns he has feathers. This is one of those gothic demons from hell right here. But anyway, it was fun. It was a fun exercise. The little rosette right here is made out of 1-inch square that's upset on 4 sides like a shallow pyramid. Then you have 5 holes that were punched in it, 4, and then 1 in the center. Then it had a few little bit of chasing lines done. Then I put it on a bandsaw, cut it off, and then I filed these little notches in to give 4 fleur-de-lis. It's as simple as it can be. They didn't have bandsaws, but I've got a bandsaw.
If they'd had them then, they would have used them.
Well, I will tell you this. When I was at Tom's shop, and Tom, you don't, most of y'all don't know about, maybe you do, but I was at Tom's shop working with him, and he said, here, cut this piece of 1-inch bar, 1-inch square bar, off 8 inches long. I was looking around for the bandsaw. I said, where's the saw? And he said, it's above your head. Oh. That's the only kind of saw Tom has in his shop. The only kind of drill press he has in his shop is one of those little egg beaters. That's all he uses. Now,
Are his drill bits flat bits?
huh?
Are his drill bits flat?
Does he use twist?
Possibly. But Tom does not do anything that I would consider the easy way. I'm not that much of a purist. I do want to learn how to do traditional work, and I want to learn how to do it the best I can by the way that they did it then. These tools right here, you can't get the effects off. All right, we were talking yesterday about water jets. When you get a chance, look closely at this figure right here. This is not flat. All these, the volume you see in here was developed by use of the tool. It's the tool. When you use a straight chisel, and I may exaggerate this a little bit, but not much. As you begin to cut, remember 18 gauge is generally at least 4 passes, okay? All right, as you go deeper on this tool, as you go deeper, you see what's happening with edges. This is your material. This may be your drop. Over here, when you totally cut through, and this drops out, this is the effect you get. To my knowledge, you're not going to get that with a plasma cutter. You're not going to get it with a water jet. But you're going to get it with a straight chisel that has over 1,000 years of history behind it. You can't get, to my knowledge, you can't get these effects. Well, you say, well, I can represent it from the back. Well, yeah, but look at the time you're going to spend doing that. Plus, you're not going to get it even. It's going to have little bubbles and little bumps, and it's not going to be smooth. It's not going to look good. Mistakes. You know, I started off making this lantern. I knew better. I knew better than to do this. But I started out making those panels out of 16 gauge. This is way too heavy. 18 is all you need. Now pass this around. You can see that roll that's beginning to develop here. But this was something I rejected. I said, you know, I am not going to do this. I'm not going to punish myself by going through this thing with 7 passes and adding a lot of weight, which I don't need. So that's a good example of a mistake. So if you're going to do anything like lanterns, lamps, some of this other work, don't get real heavy stuff. The other thing you'll see, there are a few pieces over here that have some layered effects to them. If you look at a lot of Gothic work, especially the facades of cathedrals, and you want to replicate that with metal, let's just talk about a Gothic arch. If this is your opening, okay? This is the furthest away from you, okay? Y'all have seen this as you project back, okay? If you want to do this in metal, the back piece that you have is generally going to be 18 gauge, and it will have the most detail in it. Most detail. As you project forward, you're getting less and less and less detail. So this starts out here as 18. This goes to 16. This goes to 14. And you can go all the way out to 12, 10. There's a piece I'm going to be working on next year for me. That's a gouche, and it will have 5 layers to it. And it will project out quite a bit. But the back details are all in 18 gauge, whether you're putting in fleur-de-lis, whether you're putting in quadrifoils, whether you're putting in trifoils, candlesticks, anything else. The most detailed is going to be that back piece that is the thinnest piece of metal. Is any of that making sense at all? Am I losing y'all on that?
Why would you make the back piece the most detailed rather than the front piece?
Do what now?
Why would the back piece be the most detailed rather than the front?
Because, all right, let me show you. I'll give you an example. let's say in some of your back pieces, let's say that you've got a quadrifoil. And this is an 18 gauge. Maybe it's part of hold up that piece on the very end. Yeah, let me see that. This is basically 3 layers right here, if you include the very back layer. But there's a quadrifoil here. You see the little details. Can you get this? The quadrifoil, a little bladderfish in here, the candlesticks, trifoils, those are the most detailed, okay? And that's right on the back, all right? Try to do a trifoil right here in 12 gauge, this size. You see, is it beginning to make sense? So what this does, this framework right here, projects out and frames that trifoil. The same with the quadrifoil. The same with these bladderfish. This front piece has much less detail than the back piece. It's almost like a picture frame on top of a picture frame on top of a picture frame. And a map and a picture. Yeah, and the first picture frame has got the most detail, very intricate detail. The next picture frame is bigger, but the details are a lot looser. The third one is really, really loose, and it may do nothing but just frame the other area. So, am I making any sense at all? Questions? Now, a lot. Now, I will give you another piece of advice. If you would like to, you can do this right here, but to pierce something that small will make you go blind and crazy. It will drive you absolutely insane.
No, I got the blind part down, I guess.
You know, you will come close to losing your mind doing that. And I was determined I was going to do it. And if you want to see the pattern, I've got it here. I brought it. By the way, if you're going to do anything like a lamp or a lantern or anything in 3-dimension, you might construct, you're doing all your detail work on a drawing. Then the next thing you do is take that drawing and you put it on 4 pieces of construction paper or cardboard, okay? And then you glue it together or tape it together or whatever else you do. And you try to determine, is this the shape and size I want? It will save you a tremendous amount of heartache. You say, is it too steep? Is it not steep enough? Is it the shape that I want? Do I need to change that? Do I need to flatten it out? So it's really always nice to do a paper pattern. Where's Clay Spencer? Clay? Did you do a paper pattern for your lampshade? Yes, sir. You did? See there? So it appears that I am having success with clay, and there's something else I'm looking for that I can't put my hands on. but I'll show you. Maybe it's in here. This is an example of, and I'm just throwing this in. This is an example of the class I did in Alabama, and Clay got a D plus on this one.
They flunked it, right?
It was, if you see, anything like a switch plate, it begins with a paper pattern. What kind of glue do you use? Elmer's rubber cement. Okay, it starts like that. The piece that I just showed you, that over here, that little wall sconce, it begins with a pattern. Then I glue that on to my sheet, whether it's 18 gauge or 16 gauge or 14 gauge, glue it on, and then you begin your cutting and piercing. This is what I would encourage you, if you really want to try yourself, that will make you go blind and crazy. That, and I'm telling you from personal experience, that is almost too detailed to try to do piercing work in. But I did it. But it's I'll tell you, it's tough. But you always begin with a paper pattern. Where do you get ideas? Okay. Where do you come up with ideas for these things?
Out of the book.
The secret to create, the secret, is that Yellen book here somewhere? Hardback book? Okay. Remember this, the secret to creativity is knowing how to hide your sources. You really need to jot that down. Okay. If you will bear with me 1 second, I will get something out here for you. It may be marked with a tab, but I really want to explain something. Okay, here's one thing. The idea that I showed you about the going blind and dumb and crazy, this is where it came from. Do you see it? Do you see it? The secret to creativity is knowing how to hide your sources. I have no secrets. I don't. If you have a question and I can answer it or tell you something, I'll be more than happy to. Sometimes I'll just have to tell you I don't know.
Show it to the camera.
All right. You got it? You got it? Well, here, you can get it. Got it? Yeah, you got it. There's one other one I want to show. I took several examples out of this book and I'm certainly don't get any money for this, marketing this thing, but there is another candlestick in here that I took, and I said, you know, it really looks neat, and I may try to modify that. In fact, let me show you this. And you see a candle cup somewhere? Here it is. I did not know how to do this. Didn't know. But I had a book. And I had these photographs right here. You see the cup? That's the only thing I had to go from. That's the only thing. Those cups right there. You see this? let me get around here where can you see the cups right there? This is the only thing that I had to go from. Well, if you're going to do that, you've got to construct a paper pattern, okay? I will tell you this, I know 6 ways not to do this. I'm telling you, I know 6 ways not to do it. Each fleur-de-lis flows into the next one. Proportions of the center part of the fleur-de-lis need to be correctly associated with the petals that are formed by drilling the circle, by drilling the hole. You do this first flat. Then I got the wise idea, well, I'll just drill a hole and fold it up and everything's great. Well, if you drill the holes first and then bend this up, your round circles turn into eggs, and it's not a fleur-de-lis anymore. So that's another example of where do you get ideas? Where do they come from? And I search these books out and look, and I can drool over these things for hours and hours and hours. And trying to understand the process that these guys went through to create some of this absolutely phenomenal work. Another thing is, if hopefully I can turn to it. Ah, there it is. This piece right here. Now this is in Renaissance format. I said, you know, that little sucker's really pretty cool. Notice the base. Notice the edge of this base. Okay, that's what I was talking, it's here. It's in this book right here. I've decided, I said, well, I want to visually guide people from this point up to this point, and I decided that these scrolls were too big, just for me. And I'm not doing it for a final exam. So I said, I'm going to make these smaller where your eye movement is more in a triangle going to the center, all right? Right here. Now notice, I don't know if you can zero in, this base right here, the edge of that base, they chiseled in egg and dart, okay? You can, if you look at it real close, you can see the chiseled in egg and dart on it. All right? Hand me that piece, that rectangular, flat rectangular, you got that? Yeah, that's what I need. Well, I said, I'm gonna do it. And so I chiseled in egg and dart just like this photograph. And for me, I said, you know, that looks a tad dinky. I wonder if I could really do egg and dart. So I called my good friend up in North Carolina, George Dixon, and I said, I know you've got Samuel Yellen Metalworkers. Turn over to page whatever that is. And I said, do you see the base of that candlestick? Yeah. Think I could do egg and dart? He said, no, you can't do that. Just a very simple, straightforward answer. Hand me that candlestick, please. No, the other one. No, Ray out. So I decided, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to show you, you little sucker. I'm going to figure it out. I made these smaller because then you got visual movement up into a triangle. All right, guess what? There's egg and dart, real egg and dart, not play-like. Not just chiseled in, playing and fiddling around. That's egg and dart. All right, now, while I'm showing you this, tell me what kind of birds these are.
Iron.
This is another test question. What kind of birds are these?
Cuckoo, whatever you want it to be.
Who said hummingbird? Why? What is this? Sure it is. It's a feast of association. Actually, looking at this, no, it's not a hummingbird. It could be a buzzard. But the flower tells you that there's no other bird buzzing around a flower except a hummingbird. That's what your mind begins to tell you. And yes, you can do egg and dart. So, any of you ever see George Dixon again, tell him you can do egg and you've seen egg and dart done. But anyway, that's enough of that.
Your time is up.
My time is up. I didn't cover near what I needed to. Do y'all have any questions? Before you leave, I want to tell you this. You do not compete if you're in the business to make a living. You do not compete on knowledge. You compete on quality and presentation. For those of you who are making a living doing this, come by and see me, and you can pass this around. I don't use this. I'm not on the internet. I don't want to advertise. I don't sell anything. I do not sell one single thing. But you can see this front and back. Very, very little verbiage. And if a picture is not worth 1,000 words, to hell with it. You sell on visual imagery, not by what you say about it. So if you're in this full time or you want to make a living at it, or here's one way of doing it, I'll hand this to you. I don't use it except for groups like this to, pass out. And I know y'all have to go eat, but I will tell you one other thing. When you start doing this quite often, Einstein said one day, and it's probably very true, that, let me go back. You see this lantern? Remember what I said about quality and presentation? Who would ever think that a stand would be part of your presentation? You see a Gothic arch? You have that same curve repeated below for the three legs that go in. It's a very simple thing, but then you've got visual tension. You've got the arches coming out of the top of the lamp going in one direction. You also have the Gothic arch support coming in at another direction, which gives you a lot of little playful visual interest. So you compete on quality and presentation, not on knowledge. Einstein said, great spirits will always encounter violent opposition from mediocre minds. When my biggest competitor is me, my greatest supporter and my best critic is my bride. That wall sconce, hand that to me real quick, that little one, small, right there. I did this, Then I made the stem for the hanger right here, and it was smaller than this. And so I'm trying to get away with things. And I took it in. I said, Mary, what do you think? She said, that looks fine, but she said, that sure is dinky. Okay, she was truthful, and I knew it, but I was trying to get away with it. And then, so I went back out of the shop, made another one, and this is a tad bigger than 3/8 right here. And I put it on, took it back in. I said, what do you think? She said, oh, well, I didn't mean for you to make another one. I said, bullshit, you did too. She said, Ernie, don't you think that looks a lot better? So everybody needs a really good critic to help you out. And she's brutally honest with me. And so everybody needs a good critic to help you. But I'm done for the morning. And, you know, if y'all got any other questions, come up here and I'll finish some other stuff up. But I'm
I
done.
have this on display over there.
Yeah, let's all go back over there.
That's where you hammered the scale into. What's left to see what the finish looks like? Is there sanding and then Scotch-Brite?
Yeah, I do that.
That's all that's left
Yeah.
to do on that?
Yeah, that's all I've got left to do on that. And I'll do that this evening, finish that up, and then you'll see what it looks like later.
Okay.
I hope y'all found it was worthwhile for the effort I went to drag him out.